Taurus. There are moments when you walk into a room and somehow, people feel calmer without really knowing why. Not because you're trying to get attention, not because you need to stand in the center of the crowd to prove who you are. There's just something steady about you, like the small kitchen light still glowing after midnight, or the familiar sound of a front door closing after a long day out in the world. People often find their way to Taurus when life starts getting too loud, to ask for advice, to talk about heartbreak, or sometimes just to sit beside someone who feels like they won't disappear easily. And Taurus has been used to that for a very long time. Used to staying calm while everyone else is falling apart. Used to saying, "It's okay," even when exhaustion is sitting heavy in their chest. Used to becoming a place where other people can leave their emotions without leaving much room for their own. Some people are strong in a loud way. Taurus is usually strong in silence. They still show up to work on time even after barely sleeping the night before. They still remember to pick up their partner's favorite meal, even while their own thoughts are tangled and exhausted. They still answer messages in a normal voice, while secretly wishing they could turn off their phone for a few days just to hear complete silence again. And if you watch Taurus long enough, you might start to believe they don't really need anyone at all. But maybe that's just what happens when someone gets too used to carrying everything alone. Taurus rarely knows how to burden other people with their sadness. They tend to store it away like old boxes in an attic. Not thrown away, just unopened for a very long time. There are nights, very late at night, when the whole house finally goes quiet, and they sit alone in the pale blue light of an open refrigerator, drinking a glass of cold water, feeling their own exhaustion for the first time all day. It's the kind of tiredness that's hard to explain. Not complete burnout, not collapse. Just the feeling of being the stable one for so long that the heart starts feeling like a tightly stretched wire that never fully relaxes anymore. And the difficult part is, when someone always appears strong, people slowly forget that they also have days when they're hurting. Everyone starts assuming Taurus can handle it. And little by little, Taurus begins living like they truly have to handle everything alone. Maybe that's why they rarely talk about loneliness, because Taurus loneliness isn't loud or obvious. It feels more like a house that always leaves the porch light on for everyone else to come home to, while no one notices the person keeping the light on has been standing in the dark the whole time. And maybe the most exhausting part isn't having to be strong. Maybe it's being strong for so long that sometimes Taurus forgets what it feels like to hear someone gently say, "Let me take care of you today." Some sentences are incredibly short, and yet they can leave a Taurus quiet for a very long time. Not because they aren't moved by them, but because they're not used to them. Not used to someone noticing their exhaustion before they've had the chance to hide it away. Not used to being cared for without having to earn it first. And not used to the feeling of setting down the heaviest part of their heart for a moment, without worrying they might become a burden to someone else. That's the strange thing about Taurus. They can spend hours listening to other people. They remember the smallest details about the ones they love. Who likes less ice in their drink? Who struggles to sleep when it rains? Who says, "I'm fine," when they're actually hurting inside? But when it comes to themselves, they suddenly become awkward with their own emotions. Like someone who knows how to fix every light in the house, but never learned how to sit down and rest beneath that light. Maybe because from a very early age, Taurus became used to being the stable one, the person calling the taxi when everything turns chaotic, the one cleaning up after arguments, the one saying the final, gentle sentence to keep a relationship from falling apart. And over time, they slowly start believing they always have to be strong. No one really forced that role onto them. It's just that when someone survives too many difficult moments, the people around them eventually forget they can hurt too. And Taurus begins forgetting as well how to simply say, "I'm a little tired today." There are evenings that look completely ordinary. A small kitchen, the slow hum of a washing machine in the corner, a phone screen glowing with unanswered work messages. Taurus still does everything like usual, still asks if everyone has eaten yet, still remembers to lock the door before bed, still folds clothes carefully like every other night. But somewhere deep inside, there's a very small part of them that just wants someone to hold them and softly say, "You don't have to keep being strong right now. And maybe that's why this kind of loneliness is so hard to notice, because it isn't loud. Taurus rarely turns sadness into tears in front of other people. They tend to carry it quietly for a very long time, like winter cold trapped inside old brick walls. From the outside, everything still looks normal. Only the person living inside the house knows how cold the room has actually become. And truthfully, Taurus doesn't always need someone to solve their problems for them. Sometimes they just want to feel that, if one day they become a little weaker, the relationship will still be gentle enough to hold them there. Not through huge promises, just through very small things. A hand resting quietly on their shoulder. Someone asking a second time because they know the first, "I'm okay," wasn't the real answer. Or simply someone willing to sit beside Taurus on the days they no longer have the energy to be the strong version of themselves everyone expects. Maybe that's the loneliest part of all, not always having to hold everything together, but the feeling that people have become so used to seeing Taurus as strong that they forget behind that calm exterior is still a heart that gets tired, gets hurt, and sometimes just wants the chance to lean on someone else for once. But for Taurus, that desire often comes with a very quiet kind of fear, because leaning on another person means loosening the armor they've worn for far too long. And Taurus rarely does that easily. They don't open their heart like a door flying wide open in a storm. They open slowly, slowly like the sky brightening after a long night of rain, slowly like someone standing on a porch for a very long time before finally deciding to step inside. Not because they're cold. It's just that Taurus understands loss far more deeply than their calm exterior usually reveals. There were people who once promised they would stay. People who made Taurus believe they could finally soften a little. And then one day, something changed. Not always through some dramatic betrayal. Sometimes it was only a silence that lasted a little too long. A text message that became shorter and shorter. A look in someone's eyes that no longer felt as gentle as before. And Taurus tends to remember those small changes for a very long time. They are not the kind of people who easily forget what it felt like to be left behind emotionally. So over time, they learn to keep a part of themselves hidden away, a part no one ever fully reaches. Like a room at the end of a hallway that always stays locked. The house is still warm. The lights are still on. Everything still feels calm and welcoming. But that door doesn't open for many people. And the strange thing is, Taurus can be incredibly gentle with others, while being painfully hard on themselves. They allow the people they love to fall apart sometimes. They allow others to have messy days, confusing days, days where nothing feels okay. But when it comes to themselves, they struggle to accept that they deserve the same softness. Maybe because deep down, Taurus is afraid of becoming too much, afraid that if they reveal too many emotions, people will start seeing them as complicated, too sensitive, too difficult to love for a long time. So instead, they choose silence. Not the kind of silence meant to punish anyone, but the silence of someone trying to clean up the storm inside themselves before another person sees the mess. There are conversations Taurus has rehearsed in their head over and over again. The things they truly want to say. I'm not really okay. I'm scared. I'm tired of always having to be strong. But when the moment finally comes, they smile softly and say, "It's nothing." Simple enough that most people believe them immediately. Only Taurus knows how many emotions were swallowed back down behind those two words. Because sometimes, allowing another person to see your most fragile side feels like standing in the middle of winter and slowly taking off the last coat keeping you warm. No one knows what happens after that. Will the other person step closer? Or quietly pull away after finally seeing who you really are underneath it all? And maybe that's what Taurus fears the most. Not immediate heartbreak, but the moment they finally soften enough to crack the door open just a little, only to realize the person standing there never truly intended to stay as long as they had hoped. Maybe that's why Taurus tends to hold their heart so tightly. Not completely closed off. They still love, still care deeply, still give so much to the people they cherish. But there's almost always a small space inside them that never fully relaxes, like someone who sleeps lightly after too many nights of waking up startled. Even if the room feels safer now, the body still hasn't learned how to truly rest again. And yet over time, there are small moments that slowly make Taurus tired of always living in defense mode. Not dramatic moments, not huge turning points. Sometimes it's only a quiet evening with two people sitting on the couch after a long day. The TV is still on, but neither person is really watching it. Rain tapping softly outside the window. And for the first time in a very long while, Taurus stops pretending to be okay. Not because they suddenly became stronger, but because around someone gentle enough, the heart naturally begins to slow down. There are people who make us feel like we always have to perform in order to be loved. And then there are others who simply sit beside us and somehow make us feel like we no longer have to act at all. For Taurus, that feeling is rare. So rare that sometimes they don't even realize the exact moment they begin to soften. Maybe it's when they stop answering "it's fine" so quickly. Maybe it's the first time they admit they also have days where they feel lost. Or maybe it's something even quieter than that. Letting another person see their tired, red eyes after an overwhelming day without immediately turning away. Those moments are usually very still. No dramatic music, no movie scene of two people collapsing into tears. Just a Taurus sitting quietly for a long time with the strange realization that maybe I don't have to be strong every second anymore. It sounds small, but for people who have spent years carrying themselves alone, it almost feels like an internal shift. Because sometimes saying, "I'm tired today," "I'm scared," "I don't really know what to do right now," takes far more courage than silently enduring everything for another few years. Taurus understands control very well. They know how to keep things organized, how to keep emotions in the proper place, how to keep life moving even while their inner world is full of noise. So the moment they begin telling the truth, it often feels like placing something fragile into another person's hands. No one knows what happens next. Will the other person hold it carefully, or accidentally let it slip and shatter? And maybe that's the most beautiful thing about Taurus vulnerability. It was never loud. It never arrived through grand declarations. It comes through very small moments, when someone who has spent years saying, "I'm okay," finally sits down beside another person and quietly admits, "The truth is, I have days when I'm not okay at all." There are some words that, once spoken, don't really change the room all that much. Everything still looks the same. The kitchen light still glows softly in the corner. Cars still drift past outside the window. The tea on the table is still warm. And yet somewhere deep inside Taurus, something has quietly begun to move. Because for people who have spent most of their life living in defense mode, letting another person see the softest part of them feels a lot like cracking open a door that's been locked for far too long. At first, it's only the smallest opening, just enough for light to slip through, just enough for outside air to brush gently against emotions that have been hidden away for years. And what surprises Taurus the most sometimes isn't the fact that they finally told the truth. It's the feeling that the other person stayed after hearing it, not rushing to fix them immediately, not telling them to think more positively, not making them feel like they're too emotional, just staying there, quiet, patient, like someone sitting beside a rain-covered window at night without rushing to close the curtains. Maybe for a very long time, Taurus believes safety meant protecting themselves perfectly. Don't depend too much on anyone. Don't let emotions go too deep. Don't hand your whole heart to another person. And honestly, it makes sense. After enough disappointment, people naturally learn how to build more walls around themselves. At first, those walls are only there for protection. But over the years, sometimes they begin blocking tenderness out as well. Taurus understands that feeling deeply. They know how to control themselves, how to keep life stable, how to continue moving forward even during seasons where their heart feels full of empty spaces. But eventually, they begin realizing something. A long-term relationship cannot breathe through too much silence. Love may survive on loyalty for a while, but real intimacy probably asks for something more. It asks for the feeling of being seen without constantly hiding parts of yourself, The feeling of being able to come home as the most exhausted version of yourself without fearing judgment. And that's when Taurus slowly begins to relearn the meaning of safety. It's no longer about how many emotions they can hide. It becomes about having someone gentle enough to hold those emotions when they no longer have the strength to carry all of them alone. At first, that feeling is usually unfamiliar, like someone who has worn shoes for years, suddenly stepping barefoot onto warm wooden floors. A little awkward, a little unfamiliar, maybe even a little frightening. Because being seen in your truest form almost always makes the heart tremble a little inside. But slowly, Taurus begins noticing. There are days when they no longer have to answer, "I'm okay," so quickly. Days when silence doesn't need to be covered up by pretending to be strong. Evenings where they're finally allowed to be tired. And strangely enough, those small moments often make a relationship feel more like home than any grand promise ever could. Maybe after enough time passes, people slowly begin to understand that love is not only held together by beautiful, shining moments. Sometimes it survives through very ordinary things that are still there after long, exhausting days. A glass of water left on the table at midnight. A simple text asking, "Did you make it home okay?" Or maybe just someone who still chooses to sit beside you patiently, even on the days when the most lovable version of you has completely disappeared. Taurus tends to love through presence. Not loudly, not dramatically. They show love through small things done consistently. Remembering to replace a light bulb before it burns out completely. Remembering their partner hates falling asleep while still angry. Pulling the blanket up more gently on nights when the other person stayed awake too late. And when Taurus slowly allows themselves to soften inside love, they begin realizing something different. Intimacy doesn't always arrive through deep, dramatic conversations. Sometimes, it lives inside the way two people sit quietly together without feeling uncomfortable. The feeling of being fully yourself, even when you're exhausted, irritated, or simply too drained to be interesting anymore. There are days when both people come home carrying heavy moods. Work unfinished, bills waiting, messages unanswered. Adulthood has a way of exhausting people very quietly. And during seasons like that, vulnerability no longer feels like some rare emotional moment. It becomes the rhythm of the relationship itself. It becomes Taurus finally being able to say, "I'm running low today. I don't want to be strong right now." It sounds small, but for people who spent years swallowing everything silently, that kind of honesty can feel enormous. And maybe the most beautiful part is this. When one person lowers their armor first, the other person often softens naturally too. Arguments stop needing a winner. Silence stops feeling as frightening as before. Both people stop exhausting themselves trying to appear perfect all the time, and instead, they slowly learn how to handle each other more gently, like someone holding a cup that's been cracked once before. Not because it became weaker, but because they understand how many collisions it survived to become what it is now. Maybe mature love looks something like that. Not always intense, not always cinematic. Sometimes it's simply knowing that after a long day out in the world, there's still a place you can return to without needing so much defense anymore. A place where you can sit down as the most exhausted version of yourself, without fearing you'll be seen as too much. And for Taurus, that feeling often means far more than beautiful promises made in the beginning. Because after everything, the thing that makes them stay was never only passion. It's the kind of tenderness repeated gently over time, until the heart finally begins to believe it no longer has to live in survival mode forever. Maybe that's the most beautiful part of the kind of love Taurus has quietly been searching for all along. Not someone who makes life perfect. Not a relationship that feels easy every single day. Just a place where, after spending so many years being strong, they can finally soften without feeling ashamed of it. A place that doesn't require them to be the stable one all the time. A place that doesn't make them feel like they have to hide their most exhausted days just to continue being loved. And sometimes, when you really think about it, maybe everyone eventually grows tired of holding themselves together for too long. We grow up in a world that constantly teaches us to be tougher, to control our emotions better, to recover faster after heartbreak. But the older people become, the more many of them begin realizing something. What finally lightens the heart isn't the feeling of being untouchable. It's the feeling of finally having somewhere you no longer need so much armor to survive in. And Taurus, even though they often appear calm and steady on the outside, may simply be hoping for something that gentle too. Someone patient enough to understand their silence. Someone observant enough to notice that "I'm okay" is sometimes only a habit. Someone soft enough to stay a little longer, even when Taurus still hasn't learned how to open their heart gracefully. And if you are Taurus, maybe you've known seasons like this too. Seasons where you became so strong, people forgot you could get tired. Or those quiet little moments when you finally allowed someone to see the softest part of you. And if you've ever felt something like that, I wonder what makes you feel safest inside a relationship. Is it the grand promises people make, or simply someone who stays gentle with you through countless ordinary days? I'll still be here, inside stories like these, for hearts that have been trying to stay strong for far too long. And if this kind of quiet, thoughtful space feels comforting to you, maybe you'd like staying with this channel a little longer too. But for now, I hope that tonight, somewhere deep inside yourself, in a place that feels very still and quiet, you can finally let your shoulders relax just a little.